my entire hope and dream was that it would like get played on the Sci-Fi Channel like Sharknado. And sure enough, I was visiting home for the holidays um, last year, and I'm sitting up, you know, having a scotch with my old man, and what comes on Sci-Fi Channel in the middle of the night was Dead Ant, and I was like, "Oh my God, Dad, this is the movie I'm in!" And we sat up and watched the whole thing together.
Today's show is sponsored by Naked Warrior Recovery. So happy that they became a sponsor of the show. They have greens, CBD gummies, CBD lotions, CBD drinks, CBD tinctures, all these recovery products on their website. I love these products. These are my two favorites, which are the green apple gummies and the happy berry energy drink. That thing to me is so awesome. It's dangerously good. You should get some. And guess what? You can. If you go to their website, nwrecovery.com, and use code CMP20 at checkout, you'll get 20% off your order. The reason I love these is not only because of the products and the way that it makes me feel, both as an athlete recovering, but as a person dealing with everything going on in the world. They are veteran-owned, veteran-operated, and a part of their mission is to support veterans, first responders, and athletes in helping them recover and live happier, more fulfilled life. So again, you can support them, support the show, support their mission, and support your damn self by going to nw-recovery.com and save yourself 20% by using code CMP20. Again, my favorites are the green apple gummies and the happy berry energy drinks. If you're listening to the show, do us a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube or on the podcast. It would mean total awesomeness. It would be awesome if you could do that. We would appreciate it. Hit the like. If you feel like you're getting a lot of value out of the show, share it with a friend. That would help us get the word out there. The team works hard, yo. We got lights, we've got cameras, we've got iPads, we've got supplements and mugs. It would be great for you to share the love there too. You can also support the show with some monies. We have Cash App, we have Venmo, we have PayPal, and if you go to Linktree/Cale Marker, that's LINKTR_EE/Cale Marker, you can find the links there. It'd be super awesome. We have some bigger plans for the show and just would, if you have some extra monies you want to throw around, awesome.
We are recording. That's a good start. I love that. That's too hot. I was gonna say I dig the mug. A Frankenstein mug seems to be.
Thank you. Yeah. Although Frankenstein just burned my mouth, so.
Just burned your mouth. I usually allow my guests to introduce themselves. So if you are on the spot now, I'm throwing you a curveball right from the get go.
That's fine. So hi, my name is Nick. I'm Nick Mason is my full name, and I'm also known in some circles as the Living Dead drummer. I'm a professional studio and touring drummer out in Los Angeles, and there's my introduction.
I love it, man, and I'm thankful for a mutual friend now to connect us. Otherwise, I don't know that we would be here. So I'm stoked to have you on the podcast. I'm looking out the window at snow. I'm figuring out that you're probably in LA and not looking out the window at snow. How long have you been in LA?
Out those windows, it's kind of a dark and gloomy-ish morning, but it's there's no snow, that's for sure. I've been here 12 years, I think. Wait, it's 21. Yeah, I've been here 12 years. So it'll be going on 13 years later this year, but I came from the snow. So
where from?
I'm originally from Buffalo.
So Jesus.
I'm a 10 foot of snow kind of guy.
Tell me the story about going from Buffalo to LA. What was like the deciding factor of like, hey, I got to go to LA. This is what I got to do. Walk me through that story.
Slipping and falling in the driveway on the ice. That was the deciding factor. And I wish I was lying, but that actually was like the moment I was like, I'm out of here. So I had been debating on whether or not I should leave the area. There's a beautiful glass ceiling in other parts of the country. This is not exclusive to Buffalo. This is many other places in the country that for the entertainment industry, whether you want to be an actor or a musician or whatever else in the entertainment industry, you have to be where the industry is. And I had gotten to a point in my career where I had done everything. Everything you could do in that town, I had done. I had played every major venue. I was well known throughout the scene. And you could do no more. Like, that was it. I literally hit the ceiling. I was touring while I was there, but I was touring with bands that were not from there. And so over the years, I got kind of a taste of different areas, and I got to come out to California quite a bit and stuff like that, and started actually playing with bands that were based out in California, so I was flying back and forth all the time. And then there was two things that kind of led to the big move. And that was, one, I got a phone call from out here for a major act that was in a pinch. They were in the middle of a tour, and I got a phone call from a manager saying, "Are you here?" And I said, "No, I'm in New York." And they said, "Well, we're kind of hoping you could come down to our office at like 3:00 today." And I was like, "Oh my God." I said, "I could be there in 24 hours. And they said, "Well, don't book a plane ticket yet." You know what I mean? Had I been there at 3:00 that same day, it could have been a different story.
What was the gig?
9 Inch Nails.
Oh.
And so, yeah, and I mean, hindsight's 2020. Looking back on it now, that was about 13 years ago, and I don't think I would have been in a place in my life, not only as a musician, but maybe mature wise and stuff like that. I don't know that I would have been able to handle something that big anyway. As much as I wanted it, and as much as I thought I could do it, you know, a decade of experience will change your mind a little bit. Where it's like, if they were to call me now, I'd be like, "Yeah, it's fine. I'll come in and I'll be able to slay that gig and make Trent Reznor very happy." At the time, I probably would have gotten fired 2 weeks into the tour anyway, because they're used to playing with the best of the best of the best. I don't know that I was the best of the best of the best at that point in my career. And in fact, the guy they did hire instead of me did get fired a month into the tour. So, so that would have been me. So looking back on it, it's like, all right, well, maybe I dodged a bullet, but it was a huge wake-up call. It was a "you need to be here" kind of phone call. Because now when somebody does call last minute and it's like, "Hey, can we meet tonight?" I can say, "Yeah, sure." And I've had plenty of other phone calls from artists like that are like, "Well, let's go for coffee. What are you doing tomorrow afternoon?" I can make tomorrow afternoon work because I'm here now. Big deciding factor was, like I said, laying flat on my back in the driveway in the snow, where I was leaving my house one day and I just slipped and fell in the driveway, and I was carrying a big box of music books, and they just blew all over the front lawn, and I just laid there in the snow and was like, "I'm moving to California." It was like a scene out of a cartoon. I felt like Charlie Brown.
Did you have any obligations at the time, or did you just leave it all?
I mean, yeah, I definitely had obligations at the time. I was working a 9-to-5 job in the music industry, but I had like a regular 9-to-5 job. And
what was the job?
I was the artist relations manager for Regal Tip Drumsticks, and I did that job for 3 years after when I got out of college. And I was working there at the time, I was teaching private drum lessons at like 3 or 4 different locations around Western New York. Um, and, playing in a handful of local bands and stuff like that too. Um, so I think a couple months later, if that was the middle of winter because of the snow, maybe a month or two later, I think is when I put my 2 weeks notice into the job. I actually sidestepped and moved to New York City first. I had a band that had been moderately successful. We'd done some touring, we were getting some traction, and that band was kind of falling apart. And sort of as a last ditch effort to keep it together, um, was relocating to New York because it seemed like that's the direction the band was going in. So to try and keep that relationship together, I moved to New York City first. Absolutely hated it. Moved back a couple of months later to Buffalo, and when I moved back, what I did is, um, called all my drum students back up, tried to re-glue my teaching practice, and then jumped on every possible tour I could for about a year. And I spent a year just tour hopping and saved all the money up and then flew out here. And, well, didn't fly out here, drove out here, put my drums in a box and then shipped them out and drove out here.
And drove out here and said, "Fuck it, I'm doing this thing." What was it?
Exactly.
What was it about New York that you didn't like? I'm curious.
So,
That you hated.
it's a different world. Yeah, it's a completely different world. It's a great place to visit. If I only had to be there for a couple of days, it's wonderful, right? I have nothing but love for New York. Living there as a musician is a very different lifestyle. So here in LA, I have an apartment. It's not bad. It's nice. I have a recording studio. It's a mile down the street. On nice days, I can just walk there. I don't even have to drive. And when I get called to play a gig and I need to have my drums loaded up, it's like, great, I'll go to the studio, grab a drum kit, and I'll drive to the venue. Easy, right? In New York, it's, hey, you're playing in Brooklyn tonight. All right, so I need to I can't bring my drums because every venue there has drums, which is fine. That makes it a little bit easier. But it's like, okay, well, I gotta take my cymbals and my sticks and my pedals, and I gotta go hail. That's going to take 20 minutes, and then I'm going to sit in traffic the whole time trying to get there. Or if I'm going to Brooklyn or Queens or something like that, it's like, okay, well, now I got to go walk to the train station. I got to get on the train. I'm now carrying 50 pounds of cymbals and a bass drum pedal and a stick bag on the subway. And then I got to get off the subway and I got to walk to wherever the hell this place is or call a cab when I get there. So it was such a hassle. It was such a hassle. I lived in the East Village and I had a decent apartment, but the elevator didn't work. Thankfully, I was only on the 3rd floor, but the elevator didn't work. So it was just up and down stairs 30 times a day. My drums sat in a closet in the bedroom. I never even used them once while I was there, but I would have to take my cymbals and my sticks and stuff, and I'd have to go on the train. Every single time I had to take the train, I would get sick for 3 days afterwards. And because you're just crammed in like sardines, people on top of people on top of people. And then
meanwhile, you're in there with cymbals and stuff.
Yeah, and it was just such a hassle. It really was. And the other thing was I hit the ground running. I was getting hired by groups right away, which was nice. But the type of groups that were hiring me, I can't say I was particularly fond of. They were all really very good musicians. The problem I kept running into was that they were very good and they knew it. So while they were trying to write what should be a 3 or 4 power chord rock song, they would constantly stick little changes or little um, I don't know if I want to say artsy stuff, but they would put things in their songs that were like just trying to show off how good of a musician they were. And it was like, you'd take a standard song where it's like verse, chorus, done. And it'd be like verse, chorus, then let's stick this one little extra measure of this thing in there. And then let's do that, but then let's do this. Like their song arrangements were getting a little too progressive for what should have been like an AC/DC format. And I kept running into the same problem with multiple bands. It's almost like they were really good musicians and they knew it, so they wanted to show off that they were really good. And as a result, it's like, now your stuff isn't dumb enough to get played on the radio, and it needs to be dumbed down a little for a wider audience. And if you're okay with playing music that's just a pop format, A and B back and forth, and making money doing it, that's what was being done in LA. The guys in New York at the time were just a little bit too skilled for their own good, if that makes sense. Not saying that the people here in LA aren't skilled. They're incredibly talented musicians here. Just
All
like,
of you in LA suck.
But they know, the people in LA at the time anyway, like I said, this is going back like a dozen years. The people in LA at the time that were the bands that I was playing with from LA, they were like a little more cut and dry with their song arrangements and formats, because they're like, well, this is simple enough to get played on the radio and to appeal to a wide enough audience. And I'm more about appealing to a wide audience than I am some sort of creative outlet. I don't need an artistic outlet in my life. Like, I play the drums. That's my artistic outlet. What I play on those drums doesn't really matter.
That was a question. That was a question I had. Was what is some of the styles of drumming you enjoy playing? Like what's the depth of drumming you like to do? Because you said like it doesn't much matter what you're playing, but I'm sure obviously it does matter what you're playing. You have a specific style and look. You go to your website, it's got a style and look. Yeah. But do you play other genres and what just go into detail a little bit about like what you enjoy drumming, I guess would be a more specific thing.
I mean, I do try to be proficient and play every style. So that way, no matter who calls me up and has something for me, I can deliver on it. But there are some parameters. Like, I'm probably not going to be the guy you want to call for a jazz gig. It's not that I can't sit and play a swing and play jazz, but when it comes to like a big band arrangement and stuff like that, that's just not really within my wheelhouse. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, it's the same thing with like extreme metal and stuff like that. Like, if you need some guy to play blast beats and just rock this unbelievably fast double bass stuff, I'm also not your guy for that. So I know my limitations, and while I try to always push the boundaries and expand my limitations, I am aware of where they are. So I know what I can say yes and what I can say no to. In terms of like favorite stuff to play, that's a little all over the place, because like I said, as long as I'm playing, I'm having a good time. I'm having fun no matter what. So I love playing blues. I love playing the blues. But I also like equally love playing, industrial music. Stuff like the Nine Inch Nails kind of thing. Things where like maybe the drumming's a little bit simpler because it's usually not a real drummer on the song. It's just programmed. And it's just like, that pounding kick drum start to end of the song, because it's meant to get people to dance. And you got to have that pulse in it kind of thing. And I love doing that. And it could be like the simplest thing that I'm on stage doing every night, where I'm playing like the same drum beat for the whole song, every song of the set. But I like that. But I actually like that stuff. Like, I have fun doing that. Like, if I'm seeing an audience of people dancing while I'm doing it, it's like, well, I'm doing a good job then. I also have a secret closet love of playing country music. So
For real, really.
yeah, I've done a few country gigs over the years of my days and stuff like that. And like every time I'm like on stage going, this just doesn't suck.
This doesn't suck. That's
This
wild.
doesn't suck. I'm having fun with this. Um, so yeah, my musical tastes are a little all over the place. Like, the industrial thing is I can't say it's been the bread and butter, but I definitely get called for that more frequently, and I think it has to do with the look, like you said. You go to my website, there's a particular look and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I tend to attract more of that kind of stuff, which again is fine because I do love it. Um, so I'm not upset by that. That's kind of been more dominant in my career than anything else. But most of the people that are calling are rock songs and pop rock songs and stuff like that and bands like that. But every once in a while, I'll get a blues or a country phone call that sneak in there, and um, I always
I
I
love it.
always try to jump at those and be like, yeah, I'll do it because it's fun.
Variety is good. I'm a fan of variety. What's it? So you say you've gone, obviously a few times you said like, I'm getting a call, right? And I got to go play.
Mhm.
Have you pretty much always been kind of this quote unquote freelance drummer where it's like you're doing gigs, or has there been a time where it's like you've been a part of a band? Because this is new to me. This is I'm excited because I get to like explore
Oh,
this
cool.
world that I've not been a part of. So
Mhm.
I'm curious as to like, do you have your own band, or have you traveled with bands for a long time, or are you just doing these gigs one-offs?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. It was
Easy
all of
answer is
that. Yeah.
yes.
It was more tell me about that. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's always been a little bit of both. I've always been like a full member of a band or two bands or three bands at a time, but I've also always worked freelance on the side. Like the I started working freelance gigs when I still lived back in New York, and basically I got like a taste for it when I was like still in high school. I was in one band in high school, and it was like, this is my band. We were like 15 years old, playing in the basement kind of thing, and then we kind of actually put it together. We actually started playing gigs. By the time I was 16, we actually started playing like real venues, and that band was around for maybe 4 years or so. Actually, that CD right there is that particular band from high school, and that CD is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. Um,
hell yeah. For the
and
people who are
so
listening, what is that? For the people who are listening,
that middle, it's that top middle
what are
one
you
right
pointing
there.
to?
Okay, so
What's it say on it?
that is, I'm trying to get it right. I feel like I'm Vanna White. Okay, so right there for the people at home that are old as I am, that particular CD right there, that was a band I was in high school, called Lurid, and we released that CD our senior year of high school. So I would have been like 17 or 18 when we recorded it. It came out in 2001, which was the year we graduated. So I think it came out like just before we graduated. That was the first time any of us had been in like a real recording studio. Prior to that, like all of our recordings were like demo tapes that we did in the basement kind of thing. And we saved up money from gigs we were playing. We actually were getting paid to play shows around town and started selling t-shirts and stuff like that at the shows. And we saved all that money up, and we bought a couple of days at we scouted recording studios in the area, and we bought a couple of days at a really big studio that we liked, that had a good reputation and everything. And we recorded an EP, and we brought an outside producer in to help because none of us knew what we were doing because we were 18. And we put that out, and we're all very proud of it. And for me, it was like the literal tip of the iceberg. It was my first time in a real professional recording studio. Like I said, we had an engineer and a producer that were kind of holding our hands through the process and showing us the ropes. Um, and that marked the beginning of my career. I was able to then take that one experience and make it my full-time job, which has been kind of great. And so the wheels just came off this story, and I forgot where I was going with it.
It's good. No,
We were talking
this is
about
all
the
new to
CD in high school. Oh, I remember now. Okay. We were sorry. I got
all
totally
good, man.
sidetracked. So around the time that CD was either in production or had just come out or whatever else, like it was like, in that senior year of high school, I remember some friends that had a band at a different school. Some friends of mine had a show coming up, and they called me and said, "We have this show coming up, and we don't have a drummer. Can you play drums for us?" And now at the time, I had spent, the last 2 or 3 years in just this one band. Like that band, that was my band. I helped write 2 of the songs. I wrote the lyrics for 2 of the songs on that CD. So I was a contributing member. We were like very do or die, all for one for all. This is our band, right? And because we were teenagers and we didn't know any better. And when my friend called me up and asked me to play drums for them also, I agreed, and it was just like a one show thing, right? And I learned their songs, and I played that one show, and then I thought to myself, that's kind of cool. Like, you mean I can have my band and I can go and do other gigs with other bands? Like, that's kind of cool. And it was around that same time that I discovered the world of like the hired gun session drummer. And I discovered other drummers in the industry, guys like Josh Freese and guys like Kenny Arnoff and stuff like that, that they literally just made a living doing that. Like Josh Freese was the guy that mainly was time circle. And all my friends in school were like super hyped on this album coming out because it was the lead singer of Tool. Were fans of Tool, and we're like, oh, the singer's to it, and just saying to myself, damn, man, oh, what happened?
You there?
Your video went away. Yeah, I'm here.
I can hear you. I don't see your video.
You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't see your video either.
Interesting.
We'll give it a second.
There
you're back.
Go. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. Pick up where you left off. I can hear you the whole time.
Okay. That was weird. Yeah, your video disappeared too. Anyway, so yeah, I got the Perfect Circle CD, and I just remember listening to it, and it was so different than Tool, which was cool, and I liked it. But I just remember going, damn, Maynard has the world's best drummers in his employment, because I was already like in awe of Danny Carey because he was so wildly monumental, and he played in a band from Buffalo in the early 90s. So I was already like, Danny Carey's awesome. But I just remember listening to A Perfect Circle and going, I don't know who the drummer is in Maynard's other band, but between Tool and A Perfect Circle, this dude has the world's best drummers in the palm of his hand. And I looked up the drummer from A Perfect Circle, and it was this guy named Josh Freese. And I was like, okay, never heard of him. And then I looked him up and realized that, oh my God, this guy has been the drummer on literally everything I hear on the radio every day for the last 10 years.
Wow.
And that's how I discovered, like, there are people that do that. There are people that make a living just playing on everybody else's records. And that, combined with my friends calling me for that one-off gig, I was like, this might be kind of cool. So that's when I started, like, being okay with the idea of being in more than one band. And so after that band eventually broke up, somewhere we were in college, like early college, probably 2002-ish, that band broke up, and me and a couple of guys from that band reformed and started another group. But I always kept the door open from that point on. It was like, I'm never going to be in just one band. I'll be in as many bands as I can fit on my calendar. So I started playing in like 2 or 3 bands at a time, and then accepting like one-off gigs with anybody else that was willing to hire me. And so I've always kind of maintained that where like I'll be a permanent fixture in one or two bands, but everything else is just for hire. And so um, I just kind of continued that. When I moved to LA, obviously I moved here and I was in no bands anymore. There was one group that I had already been playing with out here when I did live back east. So I continued playing with them when I got here, but that was again just like for hire stuff. Um, and then I just kind of, dug my heels in and said, well, I'm freelance, and if a particular group comes around that's worth being involved in permanently, then I'll do that. Um, but you know, like I always leave that door open now, where it's like, oh, I'll be a permanent member of your band. That's cool with me, but I still have to like pay the rent. And playing with everybody is kind of how that happens. So, and then there's some bands too now where it's like I look like I'm a member of the band. I'm in all their photos and I'm on their website and I'm on their social media and stuff like that, but behind closed doors it's like I'm just collecting a paycheck and I'm not really in the band. So
That's interesting.
there's several groups like that where it's like on paper I'm not really a member of the band, but for all intents and purposes when you see the band live or on their CDs or in their press or whatever else, like I'm there in all of it, kind of thing. So
That's fascinating to me. Show business is what I'm going to call it. Is a fascinating
yeah,
creature and how it operates for sure. The interesting part is like, how do you, if I'm playing in one band, how do you keep up with one band, let alone especially like during tour season, versus how do you keep up with multiple bands and then doing multiple gigs? Do you only drum
well,
all day
it
long?
yeah. I pretty much, yeah. I have done, you know, three different gigs in a day where I've had to go from one to the other to the other. Um,
Wow.
I spend, 8 hours a day in my recording studio. It's like that's like a regular 9 to 5 job. Like we're gonna get done with this interview, and I'm gonna go to the studio, and I'm gonna be there for a few
What are you
hours.
recording there? What are you
Um,
recording there?
well, whatever I'm asked to right now. I'm involved in a bunch of different records. Basically, like it's the freelance life at a lot of it. So. Um, I'll get bands and artists and stuff like that from all over the world that will call up and they'll say, we're working on this new song and we want you to play drums on it, or we're working on this new record and we want you to play drums on it, or whatever it is. So they, with remote work and stuff like that, with the power of the internet, we can do that now. So they'll send me their song demos, and then I will lay down my drums to it. We'll bounce demos back and forth um, for a couple of days, kind of thing. Like I'll play and I'll send them some ideas based on what they're asking for, if they have any notes or anything like that, or if they're just leaving it open to my interpretation. I'll shoot them two or three different ideas, and then they kind of on their end collectively go over that. They listen to it, they come back to me and they say that we like what you did here, don't ever do that again, we like what you did there, and then
Yeah.
based on that I'll get a final composition out of their direction, and then record it and send it over to their producer or whoever's doing the editing and mixing and stuff like that, and then on to the next one. So I just finished one up last night um, for a guy that I actually used to be in a band with um, back in Buffalo before, one of the many bands that I kind of just was scraping money together to move here with. um, One of the guys from that band has a new project that's kind of cool. It's um, he's using different musicians from all over the world, and he's doing multiple genres. It's almost like a multimedia project where it's like here's a synth pop song, here's a rock song, here's a rap song, here's a this song kind of thing, and he's just got collaborators from all over the place. I think the singer on the song I finished last night is in England actually. And so I've been doing work for him where he's just, once a song is ready for the drums, he'll just send it over and I'll, go through the process of doing the demos and stuff. So I just finished up one song for him last night, sent him the final versions of everything, and then he gets it taken care of on his end with mixing and editing. And so
It's
and then
wild.
I'm
I've
working
seen.
on.
I was gonna say
Go ahead.
it's Zoom. It's so hard when you're not in the same room to you kind of like talk over
I
each other
know
sometimes.
the internet delay too sometimes interferes.
Geez, how dare it, internet? It's terrible. This thing we can do from miles apart. No, it's fascinating.
Right.
It's what was I gonna say? I was on your website and I was like the amount of projects, I guess to call them, you've been on an enormous amount of things, right? Whereas like it seems like if a band was to put out that much music, you have way more music than that because you've been basically spreading your drum seed every which way for different bands, which is really fascinating. Is there any other like projects? Since I'm curious now that you're out in LA, are you doing just drumming for bands, or are you doing anything in like other parts of the industry, obviously, or I think like, are you doing any movies? Are you making music for those, or what's the deal with that?
So I've done a couple of movies, and it's not something I actively pursue. It's more like if the opportunity pops up, I'll do it. But it's
Why
not
is
something
that?
like I'm really out there. Well, I just think that I already spread myself out so thin when it comes
Seems
to
like it.
sitting behind a drum set that I just don't know that there's really enough time to dedicate that much energy and effort to something else like that. Um, so because it's time consuming, really. Like, so if you're on both ends of it too. So if like you're doing composition for a movie, so if you're writing music for a movie, I mean, that's an all day, everyday thing until the project is done, which means you effectively have to put everything else on hold. I've only, I composed music for a commercial one time. And just the
Mhm.
process of that was like, it took days just to like do a minute and a half commercial, and then if you're acting in a movie, it's like, okay, well, how many days do I have to be on set? And from what time to what time? What's the call time? And how many days am I going to be there? And stuff like that. So, um, it's like I said, if I get a magic phone call that just says, "Hey, you want to be in this movie?" I'll say sure. But outside of that, like I'm not actively going after it. I've done a few TV shows and stuff like that, and I've been in two movies actually, that one and that one.
I
And
see
I know
that. And,
you can't really see the detail, but
well, some people just
but that
some people
one's
just listen. So I'm just going to tell them you have a wall behind you. Just
oh
give some advice.
oh
You
it's
have a wall
okay.
behind you.
So
Tell the
yeah, if you're
city.
just listening to this, yeah,
Yeah,
there's a select grouping of CDs and movie posters behind
yeah.
me. So I and in all of those movies too, like I'm not really acting, like I'm playing the drums. Like that's the other thing too, is like if you want me to like walk and talk and recite lines, I'm probably not going to do it. But if you want me to sit down behind a drum set and be the dude playing the drums in the background of the scene, sure, I'll come down and do it. And that's exactly what those movies were. One was called Dead Ant, which I know it's on Hulu right now. And That's like a kind of like a B sci-fi horror movie, and my entire hope and dream was that it would like get played on the sci-fi channel like Sharknado. And sure enough, I was visiting home for the holidays um, last year, and I'm sitting up, you know, having a scotch with my old man, and what comes on Sci-Fi Channel in the middle of the night was Dead Ant, and I was like, "Oh my God, Dad, this is the movie I'm in!" And we sat up and watched the whole thing
Holy
together.
shit.
And I'm in like one scene at the very end of the movie, and it's literally like if you blink, you'll miss me. Like half the time, somebody's elbows covering my face anyway. And then the other movie over here is Bill and Ted 3. Bill and Ted Face the Music, which came out last August. And that was again just kind of like a random, like a friend called me up and said, I heard Bill and Ted's looking for musicians for their movie, and sent me some information on it. And if you watch the end credits of the movie, they do a montage of people. Like, it's hard to describe without giving away spoilers to the movie, because it ties into the finale and it ties into the plot. But if you watch the end credits, there's montages of people around the world playing music. And the idea is that we're all playing together. We're all playing the same song, and we're all playing together around the world to bring world peace. And like, they had me film and I did it in my studio, and I just had to film myself playing along to a song that they sent. And it was like, I don't know, I think the song was like a minute long or something like that. And like, my scene is chopped down to like 11 seconds during the end credits anyway. But it was still cool. It was like, oh, you watch the movie and it's as clear as day. You're like, oh, there's Nick. So yeah, if somebody calls up, and like both of those movies was just a friend calling me and be like, hey, do you want to do this thing? And sure, what day? Oh, okay, yeah, I'll make time for that. But I wasn't actively seeking out roles where I'm playing drums or anything like that. And so yeah, if I get a random phone call from a friend that says I'll be in this movie, I'll do it.
What does a drummer do to stay in shape besides drumming?
Well, I can't speak for every drummer, but I wake up early every morning and I exercise.
What do you do
I
to
try to
exercise?
eat healthy. I do. I mean, I do different things. I'll do some mild weightlifting, lots of cardio stuff, sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups. I basically I have like a yoga mat and a pull-up bar in my house, and if I can't do it with those, then I'm not going to do it. So, just try to stay in general good health. Eat, try to eat as healthy as you can and stuff like that, and yeah, just keep the blood circulating. You don't need to. I don't think need to go buy a gym membership to keep in shape as a drummer, but it doesn't hurt. You know. So also kind of probably depends on the type of music you're playing too.
I have a friend who is a metal. He's a drummer, but he plays a lot of metal, and I'm just like how like my legs would be on fire. I mean, just the drumming in general, just keeping that bass going. It's like, like you gotta have strong legs, man. It's impossible.
That stuff's really very, very strenuous. I have friends that can play circles around me with their feet, kind of thing. I'm not sure if there's anything outside of just like technique exercises that really can kind of keep you in that sort of shape. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I never called my friends up and was like, do you go jogging in the morning to be able to do that? So
I'm just curious. I have a background in it, and working out and all that stuff. Yeah, so that's what I was curious. I was curious to just like what you do. So I owned a CrossFit gym for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go on like long walks, maybe 2 or 3 days a week in the mornings. And when I say long walks, like over 5 miles, I try to hit at least 5 miles. There have been days that I've done 10, and that's just like going out for a walk kind of thing, but a long one. And then, so I'll do that 2 or 3 days a week, and then other days, I'll do 100 sit-ups and a bunch of pull-ups and push-ups, or do some I got a couple of dumbbells and I'll mess around with those on the yoga mat or something like that. So I try to keep in good health, and I think that having a decent diet definitely helps, because
Sure.
as it's well documented, we all know like certain foods and stuff like that can make you sluggish and stuff. And the last thing I want to do is be tired while I'm trying to play the drums.
This is so fascinating because stereotypically, and I have a question on the backside of this, is stereotypically like that would not be industrial or style, like that's not the lifestyle of a drummer, touring drummer that I would have in my mind, especially growing up. It's like waking up early, getting on your yoga mat, eating healthy, walking 5 miles 3 days a week, and getting some fresh air and really taking care of their body. So my question is like, what's different about the life when you were like 16, 17, 18? Like you have this vision, this stereotypic vision of what you're going to be when you make it as a drummer to what it is now.
Right.
Like, what's the difference?
It's very different because you grow up with the stories of your heroes, and your heroes are waking up at 6 p.m. and they're partying all night, and they're living that stereotypical rock star thing. And I'm not ashamed to admit, like when I was younger, I was all in. I was all in on the rock star life. I played in some bands that took things to excess, and we saw the things that our heroes had done, and then we tried to outdo them. Like I'm not ashamed to admit that because I had a lot of fun, and I don't regret anything. So, but I think as you get older, things sort of switch and change a little bit. At least they did for me. Priorities change. It's the same kind of concept as you get married and start a family or something like that, and then all of a sudden your priorities shift. And I've seen this with so many people where it's like, they're all in on like quote unquote trying to make it as a musician, and then they end up, I don't want to say they do a 180, but they end up finding other priorities in their life. They find something else that became more important and shuffled to the top of the deck, whether it's getting married and having a family, or some sort of new business opportunity that they never thought about before and they discovered they really loved it, or so, you know what I mean? So for me, what happened was drumming was at the top of the deck, and then as I got older and really dug my heels in on it, it went from the top of the deck to just still being on top of the deck, but I had to reshuffle everything else, if that makes sense. I don't know if this analogy is landing at all.
It's landing. I'm with you. I'm curious as to when you say you dig your heels in, though, are you talking about like doing some like discovery of who you are and like, okay, hey, like I've got to reshuffle the priorities? Like I'm almost kind of curious as what that was like for you.
Like if I wanted to keep drumming on the top of my deck, then I needed to reshuffle the rest of the deck. And that's the thing, is because you can't perform at the same level that's demanded of you if you have a hangover, or if you're showing up late, or if you're distracted by 100 other things. You know what I mean? Like all right, I'll give you a straight example. So like I said, there was a band I was in that was doing pretty well for itself, and we tried to outdo all of the stereotypes that were set by our heroes. So we were young. We were in our early 20s, and we did the dumbest thing in the world. Like if we had a really big important gig coming up, we were playing some big festival opening for some huge band or something like that, or whatever it was, right? We were headlining some big venue in town or something, and we sold the show out or something. If we had something coming up that was really, really important to us, we would have a house party. We'd throw a massive blowout house party, but we didn't do it after the show. We did it the night before the show, of like celebrating what we're going to do tomorrow. And that sounds so dumb, because then you're going to rage all night, and the next day you're going to sleep until 1 p.m. because you're, wiped out from partying, and then you got to go play this important show afterwards. Like, when you're 19 years old, 20 years old, you can rubber band back from that pretty quick and you're okay. You can't do that when you're 29, 30 years old or whatever. You just don't rubber band back as fast. What we should have been doing was partying after the show and celebrating what a good job we did instead of partying the night before saying, look at this great thing we're about to do. So it's stuff like that where it's like, okay, got to reprioritize if we want to be able to continue to do this. So that kind of was the inventory I took in my own life over the course of the many years of like, if I want to be able to play in as many projects as I'm doing at any given time, well, then I need more hours in the day. Okay, well, that means I got to start waking up earlier. If I want to make sure that I have enough energy to sustain myself on a 15-hour workday, okay, well, that means I better stop eating pizza as frequently as I like to eat pizza because I know that's going to make me sluggish and slow and tired. And maybe I should eat something like spinach that'll give me a little more energy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just like gradual things over the years of like, all right, well, if I want it, if drumming in my career is this important to me, and I want to make it last, and I want to do as much out of it as I can, well, then I'm going to have to take this one thing that I normally do, and I'm going to have to shuffle that down on the deck a little bit more in order to keep doing what I'm doing. So like I said, working a 15-hour workday or something like that. If I'm playing, I got with 3 different bands, and they're 4. Every one of those bands is sending me 10 or so songs that I have to learn, and they all have a deadline on them of like, all right, you start rehearsals with band A on Friday, you start rehearsals with band B on Saturday, you have a gig with band C on Sunday, whatever it is, right? Whatever your schedule is. Okay, 3 different bands sending me 10 songs that I have to all learn in 1 week. That's 30 songs I have to learn this week. How do I make time to learn 30 songs and work on 30 different songs for 3 different bands every day that week? Obviously, I'm going to have to need more hours. So that's where things like that, when my schedule started getting like that, it's like, all right, well, now I got to wake up earlier. I can't wake up at 10 or 11 like I normally would do, and then kind of like leisurely get over to the studio to jump behind the kit for a couple hours. Like, I can't do that. Now I have to wake up at 6 or 7. I have to make sure I'm behind the kit by 9 a.m. like a regular job, just to sneak in those extra couple of hours to make sure I have enough time to dedicate to everything that I have to do. And now it's the same way, this past year doing mostly recording session work every day. It's the same thing. I have a calendar in the studio, and every time I get a new recording session, it goes up on the calendar and it's got the deadline written on when the producer needs it by or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, I have to crank out 2 demos today for this band. I have to finish editing the song for that band. And then this artist called me about doing this other thing. I need more hours in the day. So automatically I know I'm going to need to spend 8 hours in the studio every single day this week in order to check off all of the different priorities I have, because I now have other people relying on me to meet these demands.
How do you manage that schedule?
I write it down.
Do you have a team? Or do you have a team? Do you have a manager?
No. Well, yeah, I mean, I have a manager and stuff like that, but they're not really managing my day to day. It's not like a normal band manager where they are like sending, here's your schedule, here's your this, here's your that. I'm very much doing all of that stuff on my own right now. My management team is more in charge of expanding my footprint.
For sure.
They're the ones that are working in the seedy underbelly of the entertainment industry going, oh, so-and-so's about to get fired, or so-and-so just needs to hire a new guy for this upcoming whatever, or, or in cases like this, hooking me up with people like yourself. Oh, this person would like to have you on their podcast. So my management team, that's kind of what their deal is. That's what they're doing. The day to day, like organizing all the recording stuff or the rehearsals for tours or learning material stuff, that's still all just me doing it. And I found myself actually having to just like make a calendar and make a schedule, like a daily planner almost, of like, I have to do this, and this today, and then tomorrow I have that, and that. Because on top of like recording every day, I'm also teaching lessons remotely
Holy
and
shit.
stuff like that. So like mornings are dedicated to recording, afternoons are dedicated to teaching online lessons certain days. And
Do you have
and
a
yeah.
do you have like a mega do you have like a mega gig that you're looking to land? Just like a band to work with, or like the obviously not touring right now, which actually that's a kind of question I had too, is like,
Yeah.
you're not touring during this time, the
Right.
last year. So I feel like you're going to have an interesting answer as to how that's changed for you, like your day to day's changed for you not touring.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know how have you worked around it, or how, like, is it been with what it's been shit, let's just call that, but like, are you enjoying the not touring life for a moment too, or like what's the vibe for you, like
Yes and
you're doing
no.
new stuff?
Yeah. Yes and no. Well, I mean, sorry, to roll back for a second, to answer your first sort of question, is there like a specific major gig that I have like my eyes set on? I can't say there's any one specific one. I just kind of, I mean, I'm always looking for bigger, better opportunities kind of thing, and whatever form they come in, they come in. So there's nothing real specific of like, I'm going to work for that guy someday. I have probably a laundry list of people I'd love to work for. So I'm always shooting for the stars, so to speak. Always shooting for bigger, better, more opportunities. To say the day to day how it's changed in the last year, it has changed drastically. So prior to 2020, my day to day was mainly split between three things. Where mornings I'd wake up, I'd hit the studio, but I wasn't recording. It was mostly learning material for a particular artist. And that would change almost daily, where because I was playing live and touring more. So my mornings were spent mostly just learning other people's songs for an upcoming event, whether it's a one-off gig, a handful of gigs, a tour, whatever it is. So, I'm in the studio at 9 a.m. and I'm working there till 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just learning other people's material. Then my afternoons, I would go and I'd teach lessons. Most of them were in person. They were not, I had a handful of online students that are located in other states and stuff, but most of my drumming students were local to Los Angeles. I had about 40 students per week, 40 individual students every week. And then I would get done teaching, shortly after dinner time. And then I would usually 2 or 3 days a week have a gig. So I'd get done teaching and then I'd drive off to whatever venue and have to go play a show. And that was kind of the routine. And the only time that routine would be broken up would be if I was going on a tour, in which you're gone. So you're, sitting on a tour bus or hopping planes or whatever. And then I'd get done with the tour and I'd jump right back into the routine of spending the mornings learning material, teaching in the afternoon, playing a gig at night, and that was 7 days a week. If I was doing any recording, it would be not at my own studio. It would be at a recording studio somewhere locally. And, for that day or that block of days, I would push pause on everything else on the schedule because I knew I was going to be needed in the studio for 6 to 8 hours a day for X amount of days or whatever. And I would go and record for whomever I'm recording for. But that only would happen a handful of times a year. I would do 3 or 4 different records a year. Not many. And then, last March when everything closed, it was a giant pivot where all of a sudden now there's no live gigs. Everything was getting pushed back, delayed, or canceled, and then eventually everything was just canceled. I joke, but it's not really a joke. It's like I have a fortune in airline credit right now because I was booked on like 3 different tours at the time that it closed. Like the last year was supposed to be like an insanely busy year. I had 3 tours booked just before July, and all of those one by one were like canceled, and now I got all this airline credit, and I had a bunch of shows that were all canceled. I had release dates with certain bands on material they were releasing. Those were all pushed back. Like everything was just a shit show. But the thing that I did is rather than sit and wait it out like everybody else was doing, or I can't say everybody else, but like what a lot of people ended up doing was sit and wait it out. It's like, okay, this is getting pushed back 6 months, or this is getting pushed back 3 months. All right, we'll just kind of wait until then. I instead just started spending money like nobody's business, and my studio was not really equipped for recording. I could do some demo recording there with some gear that I had, but I couldn't do more than like a demo. Like it wasn't good enough to release on someone's album and get played on the radio or anything like that. It was like a demo. Like if you need me to bang out a quick idea for your song, I can do that, and I can email it back over to you. And that was kind of the most I could do at my studio. So what I did is I started buying tons of recording gear, and I completely overhauled my studio. I redesigned everything top to bottom, rearranged everything in there, started buying all kinds of new microphones and preamps and sound equipment and all kinds of stuff. And I subconsciously, I think, thought like, this pandemic thing ain't going to go the way people says it's going to go. They're closing everything for 2 weeks. I feel like that's going to go longer. And then when it did go longer, they're like, well, it's going to be like a couple months. And I was like, inside, like on the outside, I was like, just a couple of months and then we'll be back to normal. And I was like, still gung ho and still thinking like all these shows that were getting delayed were going to happen. But something in the back of my head was saying, it might go longer. And I thought, okay, well, I need to do something about this. So I overhauled the studio, and I set it up to do professional multi-track recording. So now it's not just I can bang out a quick demo. Now it's I can play on your record from my studio without having to go to a recording studio. I can do it all at my place now. And that's exactly what I just started doing. And a lot of my students push pause on lessons, and then other ones switch to online, and I'll do drum lessons through Zoom, just like this. So I'm not teaching as much as I was before, but the balance to that was that once I started being able to do good quality recordings on my own, that shot up. So now the biggest time, the biggest chunk of my days is spent recording, and then I'll teach a couple lessons in the afternoon, 2 or 3 in the afternoon instead of 6 or 7 in an afternoon like I used to do. But that's fine because it evened out. So I just constantly upgraded everything and learned new tricks and talked to producers and stuff like that. Like one of the first things I started doing was I started taking some of the drums I was recording and I sent them off to producers that I trusted and said, just tell me if it's good enough. Like just let me know what I need to do to make this better and make it sound the same way it does if I went to a studio and did it. And thankfully, a lot of these people came back and were like, no, they sound good. They sound fine. You're doing good. So that gave me the confidence to be like, okay, I can do this. I can do this on my own now.
Yeah.
So, and I think it just sort of snowballed. I would have a couple of friends hit me up and be like, oh, you can do recording? And I said, yeah, let me record on your thing. And they liked the quality. And then, then a couple of outside artists rolled the dice and like, oh, you can do recording? I have a song. You want to play on it? Sure. And then I do that and they liked it. So then they kept coming back. And I think just in 2020 alone, I played on like 30 different records.
Holy shit.
Instead of like 3 or 4 in 1 year, I did like 30 in 1 year.
How do people get hooked up with you to do that if they want? Is it social media or your website?
Yeah. So yeah, social media, email, phone call, whatever. Like, if somebody is listening to this and they want to contact me, like I'm really, really easy to find. Like if you look up Living Dead Drummer on the internet, it's only me. You're only going to get me. You'll get my website, you'll get all my social media, and you can contact me through any one of those outlets. I'm very easy to find and track down. So yeah, and the cool thing is doing it remote. You can do it anywhere in the world. I played on a record in England. I played on a record from Canada. I'm currently working on one from New York, one from Vegas. I've been collaborating with people all over the United States with this, not just locally in LA. And it's all just through email. It's just you send me your thing, I'll do the drums, I'll send you the drums, you can take care of it. I have new songs coming out with different artists all the time. One of the bands that I am a member of is the Rhythm Coffin, and that's those 3 CDs behind me right there. Those are all theirs. This bottom one right here was entirely written, recorded, and released during the pandemic. It started out with, because we had all of our gigs canceled, and it started out with, the guitar player saying, well, while our gigs are on hold, I got some new songs that I've been writing and stuff like that. Well, I'll send you guys the demos and we can start messing with these. And, in the past, what he's always done is his demos would have like a generic drum loop on it that he's playing the song over top of, and he just uses that drum loop kind of as his metronome. And I said, I can record the demo drums. Like if you want, like send me a version of the song, take your program loop off, send me the song without it. And I'll do the drums on my end. I'll do the demo on my end. And so we did that. And then we sent it to the whole rest of the band. So it had my demo drums on the song and his demo guitar and vocals. And that way they could sort of, start putting their pieces and their parts together on it. And then, a month after that or so, when I started getting a little more confident with I can actually do like a professional multi-track recording, I was like, we might be able to do this just on our own. And we talked to the bassist and we're like, do you have a home recording setup? Yes, he does. Okay, everybody in the band has a home recording setup. Let's try it. And so we started doing the tracking to that. And once I finished the drums on all the songs, they were sent out to everybody else. They did all of their parts. We recorded all of our own vocals because everybody in the band sings. So I did all my vocals from my studio, and everybody pieced it together, and it was all sent off. And our bassist is a really great audio engineer, and he's got a background in it and stuff. So he did all the mixing on it, and like that was it. And then we sent it off to get mastered, and that came out at the beginning of October. That record came out, and we literally started doing the demos to it in March. By the end of April, I think we decided we're just going to record it on our own, because the previous 2, we went to a big studio in Hollywood to do those, and we were like, let's just do this on our own, and we did, and it turned out great. It sounds fantastic. We're all really proud of it, And then from there, we've been releasing music videos and stuff like that. We're shooting a new video, I think in 2 weeks. for one of the songs on that record. And yeah, it was done, like written, recorded, and released all in 2020, all on our own from separate studios.
See, that's the thing that I love to hear during the pandemic. And I talked about it a little bit on my podcast, is just like people taking ownership a little bit more than they have of their own lives than they have before pre-pandemic, you know, and saying,
Yeah.
hey, like what can we do? Right? Like if we can't do this,
Mm-hmm.
then what can we do? And how do we kind of take claim of our own power, of our own person? And I think that's pretty fucking awesome. So congratulations to you and the band on that's. It's not even like full pandemic because we're almost a year now, but that's only like 6 months, which is that's
Right.
pretty awesome.
It's been
That's
pretty
pretty
cool. And like I think a lot of other musicians have been capitalizing on the same thing that I have, of like, okay, look, if we can't go out on the road and we can't go play clubs and we can't do whatever, what can we do? Well, we can always sit and write. Everyone can sit at home with their guitar and they can write a new song. And if they have the means, they can get that song recorded. And, you know, as a result, I've had a lot of brand new music recorded and released all last year. I had a new song with another group that's made up of people from all over the country. There's one here in LA, outside of myself. There, one guy's in Arizona, one guy's in Wisconsin. We release one new song every single month, and we have about a year's worth of material and various stages of finished. Like I'm done with I was done months ago on like 6 of the songs. So like 6 months of releases I was already done with, you know. We just had a new song come out last week, and then another artist that I've been recording various songs for all last year. She's got a new song coming out this Friday. And so, and these are all people that kind of were in the same mindset of I was, of like, just because I can't go out on stage doesn't mean I can't push pause on. It doesn't mean I have to stop writing and recording. And you know, if you have the availability and you have the means to do it, you can still record new material and put it out there and and get that creativity out that way. And thankfully, it's people like that that have that mentality and that mindset that's kept me employed and kept a roof over my head all year. You know, I did get out on stage a couple of times last year. I mean, I was playing out until March when the hammer dropped, but last October I actually got out and did get to play in front of an audience like old times.
What was that like?
It was weird because it was normal. It was weird because it was like nothing had happened. I flew to Baltimore for a few days with a guy named Michael Grant, and he released a solo record. I got hired by him to play in his band literally the week before the pandemic. Like I got hired and his record was supposed to come out in the spring, and then we were supposed to be on the road like all summer. And then the pandemic hit like a week after he hired me, and everything got put on hold. His record got delayed, everything. Eventually the label did release the record over the summer, and then we had like this crazy one-off, like, do you guys want to fly to Maryland for a few days? And we had to do like a meet and greet and play a show. And it was weird because like Maryland, like it was just normal. Like, you know, the band, we were all wearing masks and being careful and stuff like that, and trying to keep our distance and everything. But like the club we played, like 200 people, no social distancing, no masks, no nothing. And, you know, it was weird because like I wasn't used to it. Like I hadn't been on stage in months, and I was like, and this used to be my every night thing. And now I hadn't done it in forever, and it was almost like I had to figure out how to redo it. I was like, I haven't stepped out on a stage, you know, since March, and I feel like I'm rusty and out of practice with it. But like, you know, you get into it in like a song or two and you're like, oh, it's just like old times. It's fine. It's, you know. So we played a couple of gigs in October. Nothing in LA. Everything was outside of LA. You know, we played on Halloween night and stuff like that. But again, not in LA. And there's another band that I played a couple shows with, and a lot of them were like they weren't underground shows because they were well publicized, but they were definitely not in LA County. They were outside of the area and stuff like that because LA was still very shut down. And then, so October was like, I think I played like 5 or 6 shows in October, and they were just like normal, like regular normal shows. You know, a couple of them were outdoors, a couple of them were indoors. Um, you know, there was some loose regulations put in place, but like people weren't really paying attention to them outside of like the bands. The bands were the only people that were like taking things serious, with distancing and masks and stuff like that. The only time my masks came off was like when I was behind the drums, because I'm on stage and even the guys on stage can't get within 6 feet of me because there's a drum set blocking them. So I felt safer. Um, but then after October, that went away again. So it was just this one weird month of October where things went back to the way they used to be. And then November 1st, it was like, nope, back into lockdown and back into 8 hours in the recording studio. And
Damn.
yeah, and thankfully that hasn't slowed up at all. We're here now in the beginning of February, and like, you know, it's the recording schedule has been steady and kept me very busy and stuff like that. And then, you know, I have things on my calendar for later this year that are supposed to be, you know, on stage in front of an audience again, but it's anybody's guess if that'll actually happen or not. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's who knows traveling there in this time. It kind of answered a little bit of the question, but it's probably a different answer. I was going to say,
Okay.
what is the most surprisingly interesting location you've been on or been to during a tour?
Surprisingly interesting. I see. I don't know if that has like a straight one location answer, because different places have different things. Like,
For sure.
I can say that the further north you get, things can be a little bit different just from like an atmospheric standpoint. So uh, I was in Calgary, and I love Canada. Like, and Canada is a beautiful country, and I love every part of Canada. And growing up in Buffalo, we're literally on the other side of the river. Like, if you had a really good arm, you could literally throw a rock and hit Canada. So I grew up with a lot of Canadian culture as a result. Watched, you know, Canadian children's programming instead of Sesame Street. But up in Calgary, it's so far north. It's like directly north of where I am, that the sun doesn't set till 10 o'clock at night, which is crazy. And like, yeah, you're out there, it's like 9:45 and the sky is like this just beautiful orange color, and it's like, it's breathtaking, and you're just like, what time is it? It's after 9 p.m. and like the sun is just setting. Like, that's kind of cool.
For sure.
I did get some cool experiences in Spain, where if we had a venue that wasn't terribly far of a drive from the previous one. So let's say instead of like a 6 hour drive, we only had a 2 or 3 hour drive. Then on days like that, I was on a European tour a couple years ago, and if we had a shorter distance to drive, our tour manager liked to take us out sightseeing. We'd get up, we'd have breakfast at some local place, and we'd do a little touristy stuff before we had to get back on the bus and drive to the next venue, because the next venue might only be 2 or 3 hours away. So getting to do some of the touristy stuff was cool, and I remember like going for a morning walk on a wall in Spain that surrounded a city, and the wall itself was like 2,000 years old.
Whoa.
And that
What was that place called?
Awesome. I wish I could remember. Unfortunately, I don't remember. I'd have to go look at an old tour itinerary and look up, you know, the cities that we were in on that tour and try to figure that out. But that was cool. And then exploring that town and stuff like that. It was like just outside of the city we had played in the night before, and the next venue was only a couple of hours away. So yeah, the tour manager said, everybody up early, let's go out and do a little sightseeing. I'll show you around and show you what's here and stuff like that. And yeah, there was a wall. You could go up on top of this wall and it surrounded the entire city. And so you could walk around the entire town on this wall, and it was like a 2,000-year-old wall.
That's
And within that city too, there was this one part on the ground that was covered in glass, and the glass was covering the site of an old Roman bathhouse, and it was dated, like the plaque on it said it was dated from the 1st century AD. And it was like you're literally standing on the sidewalk and you're looking down on this one just chunk of glass that's covering the sidewalk, and a little plaque that says it was a Roman bathhouse that was uncovered in an archaeological dig dating back to the 1st century AD. And you're just standing over it. You're like, oh my God, this is, the 1st century AD, like year one. You know what I mean? Stuff like that is super cool. Stuff like that is really super cool. And in fact, in that particular tour, we traveled through Russia, France, Spain, Portugal. And when the tour was over, I actually stayed in Spain for an extra week and took a vacation. I had a little condo on the beach, and the band paid for it and paid for my return flight to be a week later than the tour actually was. And I took a vacation all by myself on the beach in Spain. And so that was pretty cool, getting to just hang out and actually vacation, because most of the time when you're on tour, you're seeing hotels, airports, and buses. You're not getting to really see the culture. Like I've been to Germany, but I've never really been to Germany, because I've been to Germany in a bus and a hotel and a concert venue.
Right.
It's like I've never gotten to go out and explore anything. So little things like that stand out in my memory of like, this was cool, experiencing this on this particular tour, or seeing this sort of cultural thing,
That's amazing.
Stuff like that.
That's pretty cool. Well, let's wrap this bad boy up. I have just one question for you to wrap up. It's
sure.
Like, what's a message for young drummers? If you could give a message to young drummers, yourself when you're 17, 18, 20, whatever, what would that message be?
Well, if I was talking to myself, I'd tell myself to practice more. I mean, that's the big takeaway, honestly. It's like, practice your craft, take it serious. There's no shortcuts to this. So if you really, really, really want to take it serious, then you need to be prepared for whatever situation is going to come your way. Because later that day or tomorrow, you could get an opportunity presented to you that could take your career in a new direction, or give you an opportunity that you didn't know that you had coming. It could be a life-changing thing. And you want to make sure that you're prepared when that happens. You don't want to be, you don't want to have to pass on something because you're not ready for it.
I think that's great. You heard him, kids. Practice your asses off. I think that's all. Hey, man, I really appreciate you. And people can go to your website and find you and contact you if they want to get in touch with you, listen to your stuff. What's the website? We'll put it in the show notes. But
it's livingdeaddrummer.com.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you. Thanks for coming on the show. Glad we got to do this. I learned a lot. It was a new opportunity for me to kind of get to see what your life's like and what that world's like, because that's far from my reality. So I appreciate you, man. And sounds like you got a busy day ahead of you. So go crush that day.
Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. It's been great chatting with you. And this has been awesome. I had a good time, man. Thanks so much. Thanks for letting me, spin my wheels for a while.
I love it, man. You're welcome. Anytime.
Cool. Thank you.